Hello everyone, my name is Ola, and in this video we'll be taking a look at the Otter Browser. So I'm using OpenManriva here, and in OpenManriva the web browser can be installed from the repository. Now Otter Browser may or may not be available in the repository in your distro of choosing. However, there may be other means to install it. But anyway, it's available here, so I'm gonna use it here. So as you just saw, I enabled the unsupported repository, as it's called, and then I will install. Actually, no, first I have to update. I just enabled the unsupported repository, so that's necessary to be enabled because the web browser is installed from there. So let's see if what was it called? Do I have to update the DNF5 separately? I don't know. Whatever, anyway, I can still install it, so all good. So yeah, it's apparently already now installed, so when I go here and look up Otter Browser, there it is. So yeah, that's the web browser. Right, so I'll have a look at some of these version informations and things. So it's 1.0.03 here. It's using the WebKit backend, so I imagine that's the WebKit engine. SSL library is OpenSSL. Alright. I will go to the website also to see what's going on here. Now, one thing to note about this web browser is that it hasn't had like a new release, like a binary build recently. What's going on with the scroll? Like if I go to official binaries, it seemingly hasn't had like in like even a couple years an update like this. This is like, it says, whoa, the thing just crashed. That's not a good look. Let's take a look at it again. What is it now? Continuous. Begin with blank page. Right, so I don't know what caused that crash. That hasn't happened before. Anyway, let's go back to the website. So when I go to the official binaries, it says weekly, but the last weekly one has been. Yeah, I don't know. That just crashes. Yikes. That's not a good look. But yeah, as it says there, it's 2022. So this is an old, ancient web browser. This might not be something that is a good idea to use necessarily, because, like, you know, security updates and such things are of concern here. Because if it's like really just an ancient web browser, then it's not necessarily a good idea to use this. But I guess there could be some use cases for something like this, but I wouldn't generally recommend it. However, that doesn't stop me from just taking a look at it, so that's what I do here. So I'll just go to some website. I don't know why that SourceForge website crashed. That's something interesting. Now, one interesting to note here is that the video playback capability has this pretty nice looking interface. However, clicking on the video doesn't actually play the video. One has to actually go here, down here, and press the play button there. That's kind of annoying, but whatever. It's still loading. Yeah, it's still loading. Wait. I don't know what was going on. Maybe this was still. So yeah, videos are working fine, and like, but yeah, I can't pause it by clicking the screen. I have to actually go here and click the button there. That's kind of annoying, but whatever. Yeah, so basic website like GNU.org of course work, because they always work. I also saw Wikipedia. These sorts of websites that don't really rely on JavaScript and the likes are of course easy enough to like use, because like I said, they don't use JavaScript, they are just hypertext, which is how the web should be. There shouldn't be JavaScript. JavaScript sucks. It's the bane of the World Wide Web. let's see if there's something interesting to show. Let's just click on the English and today's featured article. I don't know who this guy is, let's see. Yeah, I mean, Wikipedia works. But I found that there were websites that didn't work. Like I tried to go to Odysee, for instance, and it just doesn't show anything. It's a blank page. So I don't know what that's about. It could be that there's just some old JavaScript version, because like this is just an old version of the web browser, because it's 2022. Apparently that was the latest release. That's quite old, but it does have the capability to to use JavaScript. So that's at least technically supposed to be supported. There, enable JavaScript. So JavaScript is on, and there's some permissions that one can also set here. Anyway, I might as well go through the settings now that I'm here. It's pretty reasonable, I guess. Like by default, it is actually pretty good. I went through these already earlier. Yeah, there's nothing to note here. Yeah, this is the usual option. There's these sorts of things. Remember these things. Enable cookies. One can enable or disable cookies outright. The cookie settings are actually really good here. The cookies can be accepted. I would keep that on, and then one can either keep them until they expire or until the session is closed. That's pretty good. And never accept third-party cookies. That's a good idea. So like this is a good setting. It works with all the things you use. So like when you go to websites, it accepts the cookies, so you don't have to mess with all the nonsense. It's not too difficult to use. It's not too cumbersome when it's enabled by default. But then it deletes the cookies when the session closes, so that's good. And never accepting third-party cookies, so that's good. One can also clear the history. There's the history options. Passwords, that's good to keep off, because one can keep the passwords. So there's of course the built-in password manager here, as many web browsers have. Now, like based on what I'm seeing here, like this is like a good web browser in the sense that like one could wish that they would support this web browser still, that it wasn't some ancient, outdated web browser. I don't see why they wouldn't keep this up, because it's not that bad of a web browser. It's not that bad of a web browser. Like it's certainly like it's not that bad. Like it's not that bad. I've seen worse web browsers than this. So it does somewhat surprise me that like they don't have this thing going on anymore. I try to see what these user agent things are. I'm not exactly sure if like how it is supposed to be used, because like I'm sort of confused about how the user agents work anyway, because like if I say mark as Google Chrome, it still says something about Mozilla 5.0. But almost all of them say something about Mozilla 5.0, despite the fact that these ones on the left are completely different. So that's just me not knowing how the user agents work. So I can't really comment on that, because I don't really know enough about that. The proxy is nice. There is an option to use proxy, so let me show you how I2P would be added, for instance. So let's just call it I2P. It's a HTTP proxy 127.0.0.1, and the port number is 4444. And let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, no, that's that. So one adds I2P as a proxy like that, and then of course you would need to enable it and click on apply, but I'm not going to do it because that's not necessary for me to demonstrate in this video separator. It even has separators here. It's easy to manage the interface here. Look at this, that's pretty neat. Yeah, this is definitely a good enough web browser. Like, wait, no, actually I don't want any proxy now. But yeah, this is actually a pretty good web browser. Like in terms of the functionality and the settings are pretty neat. I don't know what to comment on those things. Stable version. It's beta version. I wonder if these are still going, because in the website I couldn't see any of these. There weren't any new updates. Anyway, that's the settings. All settings. I'll apply what I've done, and let's see. There's also this sort of a interface also. There's a tab switch. I didn't see this before. Tab bar. Yeah, there's also like all settings, which is like there's like a lot of stuff here. Yeah, one can even go further into the details, and like, yeah, that's pretty good. like, yeah, that's pretty not difficult to use. Let's go something like the content blocking is good. Let's see. Yes. So it comes with content blocking, which is like generally called ad blocking. That's pretty good. Yeah. Okay. Pages in memory limit. I wonder if that could be increased. That's probably too much, but who cares? I wonder what happens if I set that to 0. It's probably a bad idea to mess with this, but I'll just reset them to default because I don't want to mess with it. But I don't like caching things to hard drives. It wears out the hard drive. You know, a web browser writes a bunch of nonsense into the hard drive. Like if you're using something like Firefox, it writes dozens and dozens of megabytes of garbage into the hard drive every day. And when you do that for like a year, it's just a bunch of nonsense. It wears out your hard drive. That's not a good thing. The hard drive shouldn't be written to unless there is something that the user wants to write to the hard drive. That's like my policy. Oh, I reset them back to default anyway. So yeah. So like if you have like something like swap enabled with the memory, then of course that's an exception. But in general, software shouldn't write to the hard drive unless the user wants something to be written to the hard drive into a file. Caching things to hard drives sucks. It shouldn't be done. I mean, there's some use cases where it makes sense, sure, whatever, but like, I don't really like it. Not the way web browsers do it, certainly not that. Sometimes caching some things that are downloaded from the internet that are retrieved every time the software opens. Some things like that could be cached, sure. But things that like expire, if the cache clears every time like the software is closed, then there's no point in having it in the hard drive. Just store it in a RAM disk. Like if I close that web browser, there's no reason to have like the web browser have its own cache. Apparently it retains this thing. Anyway, should I show some other options? Like what is? I guess this is a website. So does this work then? This seems to work, or does it? Maybe not. I guess it doesn't. Yeah, and it crashes. Yeah. Okay, so this is not a usable web browser anymore. This is an outdated web browser that's like a historical artifact at this point. Unless some work picks up on this again at some point, this is basically a dead project. I might as well look at it, look it up on the Wikipedia and see if there's some information on it. It doesn't say anything about it being cancelled, so it might technically still be like alive as a project, but it hasn't had a meaningful release. Look at this, stable release 2022 February, so like that's a while ago, so it's over 2 years ago. In fact, quite very soon it will be 3 years ago, because like it's February 2025 right now, so it will be 3 years ago. It's almost 3 years ago. It's actually almost 3 years. It's closer to 3 years ago than it is to 2 years ago. Almost 3 years ago. It's nearly 3 years ago. This month it will be 3 years ago. So since it hasn't had a release in 3 years, it's de facto dead, basically. Because like for a web browser, if it's in this state, then it's pretty much useless when it comes to like, if you want to use the contemporary web with all of its JavaScript ridden nonsense, it's not really usable. And then there's all the viruses and nonsense you will get from the internet without security updates, so that's of course bad also. So yeah, it's not necessarily the best thing to use anymore these days. But I don't really see why that is. And also look at this, it's also supported by like lots of operating systems, like paying attention to like Haiku and Riscoa specifically. Like that's interesting, in that like there's not many web browsers that work with Haiku. Like there was like GNOME Web or like the NetSurf nonsense like that weird web browser, and like yeah, it's like it's pretty neat that it works here. So then it's unfortunate that like this has been basically effectively abandoned at this point. 3 years is a long time. Why is it 3 years? That's too much. That's too much time for a web browser, in the sense that like in the contemporary world, and like the security updates are of course the biggest problem with like outdated software. Now I would want to take a look at some reference, but this thing doesn't run JavaScript at all. Let's see what the latest release is. Yeah, look at this, 23 days ago. See, so it's not like, look at this. Even this thing doesn't like run JavaScript, so like you can't use that as like an excuse that like, oh, but like who cares about like some JavaScript thing. This thing doesn't even run JavaScript, and it has a latest release 23 days ago. So you can't really talk about like, oh, who cares about JavaScript. This doesn't have JavaScript, so yeah. And this is like no good. No good. I cannot recommend. There might be some use cases for a web browser that's outdated and it can display some, like if you're displaying local files and like if you have local files on your hard drive or like whatever HTML content that you are looking at, there are some use cases like that, but then like now one thing I've come across is I want to test the HTML5 compatibility. Now I'm not too familiar with making these sorts of tests, so I don't really know which test to go for, but I've come across some content creators on the internet testing these sorts of HTML5 tests, so I want to see if I can do that sort of thing. I've never done these sorts of things before, so I don't know what this is about. Like in the sense that like what these websites are, like what the heck is all this nonsense? Where do I get the test? Like is there... Undefined is not an object. Actually no, maybe not. I guess this is just so outdated and whatever, it doesn't even understand JavaScript properly. As far as I understand, it's supposed to be able to like understand JavaScript because it had JavaScript there in the options. So yeah, it's just outdated. Yeah, it's just 3 years old. Your process compare. Yeah, it doesn't run. It doesn't support it at all. It's just 0 basically. Look, it's not even running. That thing is just spinning around. Whoa, that looks bizarre. Yeah, it doesn't support it at all. It's just not working. Yeah, that's Otter Browser. It has like a good foundation, but unfortunately it seems to be effectively abandonware. That's unfortunate. Oh, look at this. What is this thing? Select lists which you want to use. So like, do I have to like enable these manually, like go here and select all of them? Is that how this works? So like I need to enable them manually, otherwise it's not on. Well, I'll enable them. Yes. So now okay. Then I go back to there to see what it does. Okay, well I assume it's working now. Let's close it there. Let's go and see what else is there. Cookies. Right, so there's the cookies that it's currently using. Then they will clear when I close the web browser. Notes. This is just some notepad tool thing. Downloads, yeah, it's the download manager type thing. Add-ons. Yeah, well, I mean, like it's a decent web browser. Like as a like it's like the base for a web browser. Like it's not bad. Like this is from the better end of web browsers. Like, yeah, definitely. Like it's not a bad web browser. Like this is like right there next to like Falcon or like Conqueror or something I've talked about in the past. Like it's very similar. Like in its essence, yeah. So it's unfortunate that it's basically abandoned. Yeah, but one unfortunate thing is definitely has a solid premise, like a solid foundation for a web browser. Yeah, what an unfortunate thing. Anyway, yeah, well, I guess that's it. There's not really anything else to look at. Like some web sites don't work, and like yeah, well, let's see. should I still test some websites? Well, let's go to kernel.org. Of course, websites like this work just fine. All of them, there's no issue. Like I can download file and like it works and like yeah, sure, like all this stuff. Open with. Well, actually, I want to download it. Open. Well, actually, it talks about opening. How do I save it? Wait, no way. I can't save it. I have to actually like. Wait, no, it's downloading it. Did it download the previous one too? Open. Yeah, I need to go to the downloads. The download menu. Is it downloading it here? Right. So like it's downloading it here. But like, what can I do with it? Transfer information. Re-download. Stop. Resume. Open folder. Open with arc. That's kind of confusing. Arc. Well, you can open it when it's incomplete. Anyway, yeah, sure. It's a web browser. It does what it does, but unfortunately, like it's outdated, so it doesn't work with the newer things, and there's the security implications with an outdated web browser. So I can't recommend. But if this video serves any purpose, then it might just be as like some sort of inspiration for whoever is responsible for the web browser to like just pick it up again. Why not? You know, it doesn't look like too bad of a web browser to me. Like I would use this like as an option. Like it would be an option like among the options that there are of web browser. And I like the fact that it uses WebKit, so that's a strong reason in favor of this. Like where was it here? The fact that it's using WebKit, that's a strong positive about it, because there's not that many WebKit web browsers. Not really, not that many. So it's a WebKit based web browser, and it has like settings like this that are like comparable to like some Conqueror or like Falcon or something like that. So this is definitely a solid web browser. Yeah. In fact, I might even prefer this like potentially over both of those two, Conqueror and Falcon. Like this is right up there with like, of course Conqueror is better than Falcon, but like talking about the way the settings look, but like yeah, this is like comparable in like quality and what I would think of this as like with Conqueror. It's not too far from Conqueror. It's pretty good. Yeah. When was Conqueror then? Conquer or web browser? Conqueror. When has had this a release? 39 days ago. See, these are up to date. These are projects that are very much alive. These are very much alive, good projects. These I recommend. Conqueror is probably like one of my like top recommendations for a web browser. I personally don't use it because I've mentioned in the previous web browser review videos, I use this add-on for Firefox that I like, and that makes it impossible to use other bases for a web browser that are not Firefox based, because I like the LibreJS extension and it only works with the Mozilla based browsers. So all the Firefox forks. So yeah, that's unfortunate that LibreJS is only available for these sorts of bases. Save. But it's already saved, it's already downloaded. But it moves the file. So like it downloads it first and then it moves the file. That's kind of stupid. At least it should download in a... Yeah, right. So like it... Yeah, right. So yeah, right. Open folder. But it does remember where I placed it, so that's pretty good. No, that's pretty neat, I guess. But yeah, sure, this is like a competent web browser, like as a base, a foundation for a web browser. Like this is not bad. The only reason I used like a Firefox-based web browser is just this one web extension. But if it wasn't for this one web extension, like Conqueror is like a competent choice. I might potentially use Conqueror. Like this is a solid choice. Like this is up there with like, I would potentially still use maybe like some Firefox fork, likely. And of course I could use multiple web browsers. So there's always that. But yeah, this is definitely up there in that. And for other people who don't necessarily care about LibreJS like I do, Conqueror is like my top recommendation for like, as like a web browser to take a look at. Like this is one of my top recommendations, yeah. So let's have a look at the Falcon still also, because I've mentioned it as well. Yeah, Falcon, formerly called Kupsilla. 30 days ago. Yeah, that's a that's right around there. It's all of them have like just around there their latest releases. Yeah. Falcon is a reasonable web browser, but it's not the best thing. It's still a fork of Chromium, so that's not ideal. It's using the Qt web engine, which is effectively like a kind of implementation of the Chromium Blink engine. So like the Wikipedia pages are kind of convoluted, so there's not a page for the Blink engine. It's certainly better than Epiphany, this web browser, this Otter browser, like as a base for a web browser. Like it's not good because of the outdated nature of it, but if it wasn't outdated, then it would surpass the Epiphany. Where's the browser? Web. Had this web browser not been outdated, Otter, it would easily surpass like GNOME Web in its usability and like usefulness and like being a good web browser 14 days ago, latest release. So yeah, all the alive web browsers are of course up to date, kept in the recent days, so that's perfectly reasonable. Yeah, but like in its usefulness and functionality, like why the heck you abandoned this one? Why did you drop Otter? Why? That's stupid. Keep this going, keep it up, start it again. This project doesn't need to die. It's easily better than something like GNOME Web, and both of them apparently use the WebKit engine, so that's neat. That's nice. It's a competent WebKit based web browser. That's really good. The terminology. Because it's talking about WebKit backend, not a WebKit engine, so like I'm just confused about the terminology. So taking a look at it. Whatever. I'm assuming it's just the engine, because like what else could it be? Yeah, it's the engine, alright. Like what else could it be? So yeah, anyway. So yeah, of the WebKit based web browsers, there aren't really that many good ones. Like GNOME Web is like, it's barely usable as a web browser. Like sure, it does its thing. Like if you just want to check your email and the likes, like GNOME Web is like, it's reasonable. So like it's not that horrible. It's not that horrible, but it's not my preferred kind of web browser. Like it's easily below both Falcon and Conqueror, and of course all the Firefox clones. So this is like not the best web browser, but it's like it does its thing. It's a web browser. Like I can still recommend this. Like if all you do is just some email things and like some basic things like that, then like GNOME Web is a good recommendation. This is also something I recommend. Of course, everyone has their own unique use case, so it depends. It's all about the use case. Yeah, that's what this is really about. It's all about the use case. So yeah, GNOME Web is definitely a solid recommendation also. So yeah, that's it for this video. I've rambled on enough. What the heck, it doesn't close the actual web browser clicking there. Weird.